Now, on Saturday, we know that Donald Trump was roundly booed during a UFC match in New York. And so now, what's new about that, a little bit of an update, is that we now find out the costs of that appearance. It turns out that it sent the Republican National Committee, who paid for the trip, back about $60,000. Now, this is according to details from the Washington Post. The price, which is $60,000, by the way, to just go to the UFC, it included ringside seats for Trump and some of his guests, catering, and security. So now, the president's guests, he brought along a few, about five. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Representative Mark Meadow, Peter King, and his two adult sons, Eric and Donald Jr. So now, all that costs 60 grand. What? Now, look, I understand catering and security might get a little pricey, right? We all get that. But holy crap. Compare that to public ticket prices that can range anywhere between $100 and $700, right? So now I think, look, I'm notoriously cheap. Like, you guys know this. I think this should have been no more than 5 grand at max. I mean, think about it. Even if you take the maximum ticket prices for the public, that's $700, right? And you add that together, 5 people, right? $3,500 plus transportation. And for dinner, maybe just swing by to McDonald's, get a few hamburgers, and you should be fine, right? That should be under 5 to 6 grand. Should be. It appears they got robbed, or at least I guess the RNC got robbed because that's who was paying for it. So now the important question about this is this corruption? Is this illegal? Oh, now interesting. Now we get into some fun questions, right? So now, here's the thing: are these tickets to this sporting event with Donald Trump? Is that a gift? Is that considered a gift to the congressman? Now, members of the House are allowed, according to ethics rules, to take free tickets for sporting events, but they can only do that, by the way, if the event is considered a bona fide fundraiser. And so, look, this sporting event, it was not an official fundraiser. It was also not an official campaign event. It was just a couple of bros apparently going out and getting booed at the UFC, which is always fun. So I'm curious as to how these guys can justify accepting these tickets from the RNC, especially at a price of 60 grand. Remember, this is donor money. It's not just large donor money, although it's probably the majority of it, let's be honest. But also, it's the guy in Pennsylvania that votes Republican who gave $5 from his paycheck because he supports Republicans and for some reason thinks, well, if I vote Republican, someday I'm going to get rich and then people might be better watch out. Okay. That's his money. Hey, that's also, the coal executives' money. That's also maybe even the coal workers' money in West Virginia. But no, they're taking that money and they're giving it out in tickets to the UFC for Donald Trump and his rich friends. How is that not an ethics problem? Okay. Now, not only back to the House rules, right? Members also have to receive written approval from the RNC in order to take a gift. Now, the RNC, of course, came back and said, "Oh, we didn't do anything bad." An official had said the RNC had paid for the tickets only because the president had attended, right? Oh, okay, but it's not an official campaign event, nor is it a fundraiser. So I'm kind of curious what this is. Is it a gift from the RNC to the congressman or not? So I'm trying to figure out the ethics grounds on this. And look, I don't really think that anybody else is going to follow up on that. They're just going to look at this corruption and think, oh, that's fine. Oh, taking gifts, even though it's not a campaign event, perfectly fine. Who's going to go after them? The FEC? Right. Especially not the conservatives in the FEC. And let's be honest, I'm sure Democrats also do the same thing. Maybe not to this extent, but I'm sure some of the more corporate ones, maybe. Although I don't have any course, evidence of that. So I really don't want to do the entire both sides argument. But I am pointing out this obvious corruption, right? So now we know, by the way, that the leader of the RNC, it's Ronna McDaniel, or Ronna Romney McDaniel, by the way. She's a niece of Mitt Romney. She is actually a very staunch Trump defender, right? Especially when it comes to the impeachment of Donald Trump. Now, you also have Trump's guests, Kevin McCarthy, Meadows, and like I said, King. They are huge Donald Trump defenders. So is this a case of rewarding people who defend Donald Trump? The RNC officially saying, we're going to help you out. We're going to give you these special tickets because you're defending Donald Trump against, impeachment. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe. It's a really, really good question. Another question, of course, is why would a supposed billionaire not pay for his own tickets? Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't, unless, of course, he's not a billionaire? Why is the RNC paying them, essentially, buying gifts for them to go to a non-campaign related event? How is that good use of donor money? I think that's very, very curious, especially considering how Donald Trump rarely uses his own money to do anything. In fact, he's an expert at spending other people's cash. I mean, look at the Trump Foundation, by the way. He literally took donor money and bought not one, but two pictures of himself. Himself. The president's deeply corrupt. And so now, let's get to the fun/ridiculous part. So now that we've dealt a little bit with the ethics complaints, right? Or the ethics part of this situation. So that the RNC pays 60 G's for President Trump and some of his friends to show up to this event. And so this happens. Man, that never gets old. But wait a minute. Not more than a week earlier. In fact, it was just about a week earlier. The same thing had happened. The RNC also paid $465 per seat for a luxury suite at the Nationals Park for Donald Trump, 11 members of Congress, and senior White House staffers to attend the fifth game of the World Series, in which you had this also happen. Look, forgive me, but I can't help but feel a little bit of schadenfreude when I happen to see that. Here we have the RNC paying so much money, all in order to see their champion essentially get booed by the masses, especially in friendly territory. It's almost beautiful at this point. Just love it. The only thing, of course, that would make it better is if that money came out of Donald Trump's pocket, which, of course, we know would never happen because Donald Trump is, like me, notoriously cheap. But unlike me, he doesn't pay his debts. So, Lannister always pays her debts, right? I always pay my debts. Donald Trump never pays his debts, ever. In fact, he still owes several cities for campaign events that he had done. He went in, he did this campaign event. The city ran up a bunch of money that the campaign was supposed to reimburse them, Never did. They're still asking for their money. Not only that, but you got back in 2016, I did a story about the Freedom Girls, right? So the Freedom Girls went and performed at Donald Trump events, right? To this day, I don't think the Freedom Girls have been paid yet. And you know what? Ain't nobody getting that money because he's either both incredibly cheap or, more likely, and both, not rich at all. Alleged billionaire. Sad. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.